All right. So if you're watching this, you're considering using or planning on using R and RStudio for the first section of class. I am pumped. I'm excited. R is a great tool. Open source, so it's free. You get to keep using it whenever you want to after you graduate. And it's very, very powerful. And what we'll learn in class is very powerful, but it's only going to be a small subset of the types of things that the R programming language can do. So long story short, it's a great, I hope that you'll find your time in class very useful towards your future as an analyst or communicating with analysts or wherever you end up going. All right, so just as a clarification here, so when I say R is the programming language. RStudio is kind of like the nice wrapper. That's this actual program here. It's the setting in which we will use the R programming language. And I like RStudio. You don't have to use it when you use R. There's other ways to access R. I like this because it gives some extra functionality to help us with the visualization and kind of understand what's going on under the surface. That's why we're using RStudio. So let me begin by giving a tour of RStudio. So when you open the program, assuming that you've downloaded it and it works all right, you should see something that looks a lot like this here on my screen. And notice that there's three different panes open here, and each one has a different purpose. So this one over here is the console. So first of all, it can be a big glorified calculator. So for example, I'm just typing on my keyboard here the numbers. You can run calculations. I just hit enter and then it communicates with the computer and it'll spit me out the result. Another example, with this caret symbol, that means to square it. So 4 plus 7 in parentheses squared, that's 11 squared, or 121. And we'll come back here in just a second, but let me first go to this top right pane for a moment. I almost exclusively use environment here. The others are useful in certain contexts, but for now let's focus on this environment. This is really handy because it gives you an idea of what data you have available to work with in R. So notice yours is probably, I guess I should mention, your screen is probably different from mine in a couple of ways. You probably have a bunch of text here that says R version eggshell egg glue or something like that. That's okay. Over here, you probably don't have this sales data. In fact, if you do, I'd be very surprised because I just made it up. But once you pull in data, the nice thing about this tab is it'll show up right here. And not only will it show up, but it'll also give you a little kind of mini idea of what the data looks like. So for example, this sales data, this is a data set that tracks monthly sales, it looks like, at a couple of different locations, presumably for some kind of a store. And so I sold $8,045 worth of stuff in month 1, January, at the Orem location. There's also a Salt Lake location, but anyways, this is kind of a way to check out, hey, I have a data set loaded into my R system already. This is what it looks like. I can also click on it and see the whole thing. So if I wanted to scroll down, presumably we'll be working soon with data sets that are a lot bigger than 10 rows. So I can kind of take a look and see what that data looks like. So I'm going to X out of this. So there's this pane. The one down here, I use 3 of these windows quite a bit. So plots is nice. We won't get to that today, but when we start visualizing the data, the plots will show up right here, which is great. Also help. I need a lot of help with R, and I imagine that you will too as you learn the ropes and learn by trial and error. So over here, there's a search function, and then also I'll show you another search function in the console that'll pop up help windows over here. I'll show you that in a later document. And then there's also files, which is just a mirror of your file system on your computer. And I'll be using this again in just a second here. So these are the 3 windows. Let me come back here and show another couple of examples of what you can do with the console, so data-driven examples. So I have this thing called sales data, and I can also calculate stuff that refers to this sales data. So notice I start typing it, and R says, hey, you have that loaded into memory. Do you want to use this thing called sales data? So I'm just going to hit tab, the tab complete there, similar to in other programs. And then, actually, I can operate on this. So let's say I want the mean sales. Very soon we'll be learning how to do this by store and by month and all that good stuff. But for now I'm just going to take the mean of the total sales. You'll get more exposure to this notation as we go along. So right now, just consider this as an intro, just getting your feet wet, figuring out how this all works. What I'm doing is referring to the sales column. That's what this weird funky $sign does. So in the sales data set, show me the sales column. Now I'm going to hit enter again, and notice it performed another calculation. This time it spit out the mean of this column as 9,091.60. Okay. I can also the next fancy step we can take is we can create new objects called variables or data sets. So let's say for some reason I just want to keep the first 2 rows of the data set. Again, we'll get more exposure to this notation. For now, this means rows 1 to 2. Before the comma is rows. After the comma, I'm leaving this blank, which means pick all the columns, so that not only do I want sales, I also want to keep month, location, and sales. So what this will do, actually, I'll just run it, and it'll give me an answer. It says, okay, here are the first 2 rows of your data set. What I want to do potentially, and you may want to do this, similar things as you go along, is I want to save this with a different name so that I can refer to it later. And so you get to pick the name. So let's say maybe sales R12 for rows 1, 2. So this name, there are some names that are off limits, some that are very bad, but in general you can pick whatever you want. So I could name it, Clark for myself if I'm egotistical, but it's better to use a descriptive name. So anyways, let's see sales R12. When I hit enter, then this sales R12 pops up. Now what it did there was it didn't pop out any output, but what it did was created a new variable that now I can access. So for example, I can do the mean now of sales, and notice the autocomplete says, okay, you have 2 things with sales now. I'm going to tab complete for the R12 again, hit enter. Notice the mean now is different. For those 2 rows, it's 77.66. Okay, I realize you can't follow along in this part, and I'm sorry about that, but very soon you'll be able to apply these exact same things to a data set that you'll have access to. And so let's go there now. Actually, let me do one other thing first. So you can do all this stuff. Notice this is nice, but what if I maybe wanted to go back and change this line here? It's hard to access. And so if I hit this script button up here and hit RStudio, this part you could follow along with a bit. Now I have this workspace. I can create a bunch of lines, and I can do multiple things. So let's say, for example, I wanted to do 4 plus 7 and 4 plus 7 squared, and then I wanted the mean of sales data $sales. I'm just tab completing here. That's what the fast typing is coming from. So now, as you get, it doesn't take long before you have complex types of code that you want to run, and so it's nice to be able to go back and edit things as they're in sequence without having to deal with this console down here. What's happened? I haven't, unlike before, I haven't actually run this code yet. So this is just my scratch space right now. There's a shortcut to running the code that's nice though. So if I actually want, so let's say I did 4, let's do 4 plus 8. So it's different here. So now with my cursor on that line, I'm going to hit Control Enter on a Windows, or I believe it's Command Enter on a Mac, and that sends it to the console and runs the code. So same here and same here. I can do a similar thing. Let's say I want to save the mean, so mean sales. I'm just going to come up here and copy, paste, and I'm going to hit Control Enter again. So a couple of things happened here. It sent this line of code to the console and ran it and created this mean sales, which has the value 9,091.60, like we saw earlier. Okay, so I can save this if I just hit Control S, or I hit the save button here. It'll pull up my file system, and I can save this script for later which I recommend you do as you're working through the assignment so that you don't lose your work. All right, so now I'm going to pull in the Blue Bikes data set. This is the one that you will be sinking your teeth into for the first few assignments. And I'm going to do it wrong on purpose to highlight another feature of R. So I happen to know that, actually you can see it right over here. I have this Blue Bikes underscore trip data. That's CSV. And there's this funny function called read.csv. That all that's going to do is it says, okay, you have some data. It's stored in a file on your computer that's a CSV file, comma separated value. Read.csv says, okay, I want to access that. I basically want that to now pop up here so that I can do things like means and standard deviations and visualization and all that stuff. So I need to give it a name. So I'm going to call it bike data. If you don't like that name, you can pick another one. And I'm going to hit Control Enter again. So notice here what happened. I get an error message. So in red text, it pops up here in the console. You'll see a lot of error messages. If you don't, then you're a wizard. I see a lot of error messages. Part of the art of coding is to figure out what they're telling you and how to fix it. So here, luckily, I've seen this one a million times. This one says, cannot open this file. There's no such file or directory. So basically, I didn't tell R where this file sits. So one way I could do that is I could do C colon / users, etc. I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to do instead is notice I'm sitting in this folder on my computer that says datasets over here. And you can do a similar thing. So if you're not there, so for example, if I'm in this, you can navigate right here. I click on this folder and then my datasets folder. And I'm going to hit this More button here, and then I'm going to hit Set as Working Directory. So the working directory is basically where R is looking for file names. And notice that it ran this code here. If you want to, you can copy paste this up into your document so that you don't have to do this over and over again next time you open the R session. And now I'm going to run the same code again. I'm actually going to modify it just a tad. Strings as factors, I'm going to say false here. This is a technical thing. I would say you should always do this, at least until you learn when and when not to use it. So I hit Control Enter. This is a big data set, so this isn't 10 rows. This bike data is about 1.2 million rows. So it's going to take a minute to load, and I'm just going to talk to you here for a minute. So notice before every time I ran a line, I'd get another one of these carets down below. Here I don't have one yet. That means it's still busy. And then look, so it just popped up one. That means it finished. And also I'm going to look over here and see, okay, I've got bike data. That's available right here. And I can view all of this. So it's got a bunch of columns, right? Trip duration, start time, stop time, etc. And now I can operate on this. So I could click on this and I could view it just like I viewed the sales data before. And now if I do something that refers to bike data, the system will recognize it. And I can start doing that. So there are a couple of alternate ways to do this. One is actually, I believe this works if you just click on this file. Then you can hit Import Dataset. And this is what this is going to do, spoiler alert at the end of the day, it's going to just run this same line of code, this same line of code again. But it's nice because this is one of the functionalities of RStudio. It gives you, potentially before you load the data in, you can see a little window of what it looks like. This is similar to Tableau. You can preview the files here. Let's see. And then there's some default stuff. This all looks good. Perfect. So this is the code that it's going to run. It's going to pull in this read.csv, and then I'm going to be able to view it as well. And it does something slightly different. But notice now I have it gave it a default name that was different from my name. Now it's Blue Bikes Trip Data. Same data set. but just a different way to pull it in. I don't recommend having two in your system at the same time. It takes up quite a bit of memory, but just as a way to kind of show you how to pull it in. Okay, so this was kind of meant to get your feet wet, get you a tour of RStudio, and wrap your head around what's going on. From here, you can go ahead and start working on assignment 1. There's some other resources that I'll point you to help, but I'm excited for you, and good luck.